What's up everybody? Kyle from Scram Speed here, and we're doing this video today because I talked to some Schaeffer reps that just got us all this stuff in the showroom, and according to them, word on the street is this stuff makes more power than any other engine oil, allegedly. Love this oil, it's good stuff. I use this all the time in my race car. And I started using it in this, liked it, so I thought I'm gonna pass it on to the customers and use it in everything else that we work on. So I got trans fluid, gear oil, synthetic and standard, race oil, all kinds of stuff in here. But they, you know, the reps, the guys that came in and actually stocked the stuff for me and everything were telling me about the specs, and they said that it adds horsepower. And I was like, well, I can put that to the test. And they said that would be great because they say that diesel stuff, they have proven results that it makes more power, but not in the gasoline world. Luckily for us, we just so happen to have that. I have a chassis dyno here in-house. So I decided to use this car. I'll stroll out here and show you the one that we're using. It's a good base test car. It's my wife's car, actually. It's a 1970 Cougar, nicknamed Freddy. So it's Freddy Cougar. That's kind of the nickname for it. It's a LS swap 1970 Cougar that I saved from the Crusher, and it's got a T56 Magnum F in it. It's a LS1 that has been ran through its paces. This thing is absolutely dogged out. It was in a buddy of mine's Corvette, and it was a all motor setup, and then it was a nitrous car, and then it was a turbo car, and then the car got crashed and he pulled it out, and I threw it inside this Cougar. But this guy is carbureted, so it's just a, stock bottom end BTR cam, 243 heads untouched setup with a Brawler 650 on it. Nothing fancy. It's a very simple combo. It's reliable. We've taken it on power tour. It's done the long haul power tour. It's done drag week. We've done everything with this car. Autocrossed it, drag race it. The car's been 749, I think is its fastest 8th mile pass. Which is pretty good for a car that you could just drive to the track, throw a pair of slicks on, then go race. But it's like my test vehicle. It makes about the same amount of horsepower every single pull, so I'm really familiar with this car and how much power it makes. It usually makes just over 400 horsepower. So I'm gonna use this as my base test, seeing as I just calibrated our Mustang chassis dyno recently with the car, and testing it in different fashions, it made, within 0.25% of each other. So it was, 1-2 horsepower at the most per pull over and over again. And I pulled it about 8 or 10 times that day. So this is what we're using for our base test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this thing loaded up on the dyno, and we're going to make some pulls today. It's a perfect day. It's going to be, 90 today, but I'm going to try to do the final test in about the exact same weather, just to make it even more accurate, even though the dyno compensates for it. I'm gonna make it even more accurate and try to do it about the same weather next weekend. But we're gonna change the oil in this thing after I do the dyno pulls today, and we're gonna see if that oil actually changes anything. I'm a disbeliever. I don't think that there's necessarily snake oil out there that you put Schaeffers in the car and it's gonna gain 20 horsepower. I'm guessing we're gonna see like 5 to 7, but we'll see. They said change everything. They wanted me to change the engine oil, trans fluid, and gear oil. So the engine oil that's in it right now is Mobil 1 530 full synthetic. It's ran that its entire life. It's never been changed to anything else, which is a perfect contender for this test. We're gonna change the engine oil. We're gonna change the gear oil. The transmission is a Magnum F. I don't know if Schaeffer's offers anything that's the equivalent of synchro mesh, and I'm pretty sure that's the only thing that Bowler Transmissions is where I got the transmission from. They told me not to run anything else other than that, so I think I'm gonna leave that in there and only do the gear oil and the engine oil. The gear oil in it, I'm pretty sure, is like Napa 8090. It's nothing special. This is a no frills build, you know what I mean? So we're gonna get this thing loaded up on the dyno, make a handful of rips, and see what it produces today. I'm probably gonna make 5 pulls today and see if I can't get it to, within a horsepower every pull. Strict 15-minute apiece cooldowns, and just make it so that way it's 100% the same. I don't want anything to be different. I don't want there to be any scattered numbers. I want it to be really, really reliable, so that way when we change the oil and everything and I retest it, we can see if this stuff actually makes a difference. And that's the goal, is to really, really make sure that it's the Schaeffers that makes the change and nothing else. So I'm gonna get this thing loaded on the rollers and pull those cars out. Give me a second and we'll pull this bad boy. Okay, Freddie's strapped down and we are in good shape to start pulling. I am gonna try to make this literally as predictable and controlled as possible. I've pulled this car a ton of times and I always get really, really good results, but I'm gonna try to wait for the next test. I have everything written down just that way I can remember. I even got, the times that we started the pulls, the temperature and the humidity, even though this all takes care of that and I can print that out, but just that way I can kind of make sure that the day I'm gonna retest it at is similar. That's what I'm kind of going for. Not using inertia for these pulls just because I'm gonna be pulling the hell out of it every 15 minutes. Make it easier on the car, and it also doesn't change the numbers. I've already tested that previously. I'll pull every single 15 minutes on the nose, 3,000 to 7,000, and that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing warmed up and do the first test, and we're just gonna pull the living hell out of this thing until we get some really predictable numbers. So here we go. Okay, that was actually its 10th pull I just made on this thing. So I pulled it way more times than I figured. I was getting a couple numbers I thought were a little bit farther off than I've seen before. And when I say a little bit farther off, I mean like 3-4 horsepower difference pull to pull. So not a lot, like pretty close. But I decided to say the hell with it and I just did 10 pulls. And right now it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I started at 9:30, so I've been pulling it every 15 to 20 minutes, right about there. A couple of them were a little longer, a couple of them were a little shorter break periods, but coolant temp was about the same every single pass. The results were pretty good. Here is every one of the pulls written down. It'd be too hard to just pull it up and show every single one because it only shows 3 at a time, but here's all the 10. I made the first 8, then I went to lunch, came back and did 2 more, and that's what I was getting. So towards the last handful, I was getting right around 415 to 410, somewhere in there on every pull, and the torque was really, really close on all of them as well. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to use for a base number if I had to put a strict number out there, but I can take the average of all these, or I can take the average of the last 3, which are really, really close. But the car makes like 415, 415 to 410. You could say anywhere in there, given how much cooldown time it's got, all that kind of stuff. So that's the results we have. The graph I have up right now is the most powerful pull and the least powerful pull, and then one in the middle. So it's extremely consistent with these pulls. It's one of the most consistent cars I've ever had on the dyno. I think that we're going to really be able to tell if this Schaeffer's makes any difference whatsoever. So the pulls are good. I have all the data recorded. I have them all recorded in the software as well, so I can do overlays for you guys as soon as I have some actual data. But now that I got this stuff all logged down, I'm gonna go ahead, unstrap Freddie, and then I'm gonna put him on the lift, and I'm gonna go ahead and do an oil change. I think he needs it. So here's the alleged good right here. This is what Schaeffer's recommended for the car. They said this is the Mobil 1 equivalent, which is what Freddie has always ran. Freddie's always ran Mobil 1 as far as I know, its entire life. So Mobil 1 versus Supreme 9000 5W30. And the filter that we always use, is the only filters we use in the house on any of our LS stuff, is Wix brand stuff. Because of that right there. Made in the USA. It's made actually right down the street, locally to us. These are really good filters. That's what we use. That's what I'm going to change it over to. Give me a couple minutes and we'll get this bad boy loaded up with some Schaeffers. Okay, and that'll do it for the bottom side of Freddy. I know it looks rough on the outside, but this thing's actually a really well put together car. I spent a lot of time on this thing, making sure that it's really good and roadworthy. Put my wife and kids in it, so it's a really well put together car. I mean, built the exhaust, you know, all custom, stainless. Looks really good, sounds amazing. It's like one of my favorite sounding cars of all time, but 8.8 swapped rear. Just a good autocross car, overall driver. But yeah, anyways. All right, so I figured I would go ahead and take the cover off real quick just to do a preliminary while I'm here. Last time I had to cover off this 8.8, I had a cracked and a half carrier. So I figured I might just check it out real quick, make sure everything's okay, but I don't see anything sparkling. And the gear oil is actually really nice looking. So yeah, seal it back up, throw in the Schaeffers and be done. If Schaeffers is watching, you guys need to get on the bag game. Much more convenient than these plastic bottles. Sincerely, every tech ever. And I'd say she's full. Yep, took about 2.5-ish for your standard 8.8 Explorer rear end. Okay, I'm gonna call that a day. Time to do some miles in this thing. So we got a box of empty oil and all the fluids that I can change over in the Cougar are changed over and we're ready to put some miles on her. So not gonna be nice on her, put her through her paces like it usually gets, and hopefully in a week, I'll try to put a full tank of gas through it this week. So, you know, 250, 300 miles, it should be enough time to give it the mending period that they recommend, so that way it can break in and do its thing. But yeah, I'm gonna go and pull this thing out, put some miles on it, and I'll see you for the next video, if that's how I edit it. I'm not really sure I'm gonna do it. I weld for a living, not edit videos, but I'll try to make it not boring and not suck. Wish me luck. And we're back. It is the following Friday after the Schaeffer's oil has been changed in the Cougar. I haven't noticed any substantial horsepower changes by driving it around, but today we are going to find out whether or not it actually worked. The only thing I've seen noticeably on the Schaeffers being in the car now is the oil pressure is a little bit higher at hot engine idle. It used to be like 18, 19, now it's like 23, 24. Other than that, that's about all I've noticed. I'm gonna get this bad boy loaded up this morning, and we are gonna make pulls until I get a very consistent number, similar to last time. So that way we can actually figure out if this thing makes more horsepower on the Schaeffer's oil or not. Freddy is strapped back down on the dyno. Everything's checked out. We got the data. Everything's ready for it. Ready to make some pulls, see if any changes are had. I have the results printed out here. I just needed to kind of organize this that way I knew for myself what my baseline was, and this is what we got. It does appear that throughout the testing, after trans, rear end, everything warmed up, it started to make more power on the last 5 pulls. So I went ahead and did an average of all 10, and that's this number here at 412, 360. And then the last 5 pulls, that's the average here at 414.76, 363.38. If you take the top 3 pulls out of all 10, it equals 415.33 and 364.23. That is pretty close in my opinion. It's within 1 horsepower from the last 5 to the top 3, and I think my baseline is going to be somewhere in this ballpark. I'll probably just do the same thing as far as average, the 10 pulls, the last 5, and then the top 3, and just see what we get. So that way nobody can argue about, does it make more? There was a fluke pull, there was a low pull, whatever. So we had a couple pulls that were lower, but like I said, it could be to engine oil being cold, transmission being cold. I had a customer call on Saturday. I had a longer cooldown time, I had a shorter cooldown time. Could be a bunch of variables, but the last 5 were very, very close. So let's go ahead and get this thing fired up and start doing some pulls. But not a lot. Well, that was the last pull, and it still made more power than the initial test. So guys, I don't know, maybe there is a little bit of something to the Schaeffers. 419, 370, that's higher than I've ever seen out of the car before today, I'll put it that way. It's still not as much as the last 2 runs, but I'm kind of impressed. I didn't think that it was going to start gaining power like it did the first day. It definitely makes more overall, I would say. 7-ish, maybe 5 to 7, if I had to guess. Maybe there's something to this. I don't know. I'm going to go back inside and enter these in the spreadsheets and crunch some numbers, and we'll see. But the torture test for this old girl is done. She did good. We ripped the hell out of her today. I went inside, pulled the results, and it's pretty obvious to me that Schaeffer's does something. It gained horsepower, and I really was not expecting that as the result. I kind of wanted to say that my theory with horsepower doesn't come from oil would hold up water, but it made horsepower today more than it did the other day, and it was across the board in every way I could break it down. Average, last 5, and top 3, it made more. These are the differences of my averages from Mobil 1 to Schaeffer's oil. And the difference of the average is 4.3 horsepower and 5.43 pound-feet of torque. Out of the last 5 runs, we were seeing a little bit more horsepower on the later runs. The last 5 runs, we're seeing 5 horsepower and 7.9 from the average of the last 5 pulls. The top 3 pulls from each, if you take those, 5.8 horsepower, 8.47 pound-feet of torque. And these are the percentages that are the difference. So if you were to take every single pull I did and say that, you know, engine oil, coolant temp, time waiting, time of day, all that stuff is different. So take the average of all 10, it's still a 1% gain in horsepower and a 1.5% gain in torque. If you were to take the best pulls out of, you know, either the Mobil 1 test or the Schaeffer's test, you will see that it's actually 1.4% increase in horsepower and 2.32% increase in torque. I don't know what to tell you guys other than that's the facts. That's what I got. The test wasn't skewed in any way, shape, or form, and I honestly was expecting to call my Schaeffer's rep and say, guess what? It didn't do anything. But as you can see, the Cougar made more power with the Schaeffers. I wouldn't say I would necessarily go out and, change my oil immediately expecting to have noticeable horsepower gains with driving, but it did prove itself on our Mustang dyno over the last week. Out of all the tests we did. So that's the video in full. If you guys got any questions, leave it below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Scram Speed's YouTube channel for more interesting stuff like this. And Schaeffer's is available on Scram Speed's website. So hit us up if you want to get some of this good stuff in your car. See you later, guys.